that voice, progress.
Actually, it just came into my mind, rather than shouting at everybody, stop gassing and come into the classes. Yes, Sadani Kala Manyata, for whatever now you deem the time appropriate. We often see in the scriptures that when, for example, King or whoever, King Ajatasattu, wants to go somewhere, he tells the charioteer to harness up his chariot. So the charioteer goes and does so. Or somebody says, prepare a meal, the meal gets prepared. You come back to announce to your master, whoever he may be, that it's ready. However, it's rude for a subordinate to tell him, come to the chariot now, or come and sit down now. So he comes in and announces, it is now the time for whatever you think fit, which is a polite way of saying, what you asked me to do is done, please come and do it.
I think my wife might appreciate that.
Whatever you think fit. Now is the time.
Of whatever. Yes, sir.
Now is the time.
Yes, sir, is of which or of whom.
It's very grammatically complex.
I'm just explaining yes, sadali kalam manyasi or manyata.
Say that again.
It's about to be explained.
Yes, sir.
No, what was the phrase you're explaining? If you say
yes, sadani.
Which sutra are we looking at?
This is just
this is just something that arose.
Good.
Yes, sadani. I'm just trying to see whether it's appearing all right. Kalam manyata. Let's put it in the singular. Yes, Sadani Kalam Manyasi. I was just explaining, Anne, that when the king tells his charioteer, go and harness up the chariot, I want to go and see the Buddha in a grove. And the charioteer does it and comes back to tell the king, okay, king, time to go now. It's rude to say time to go now, O king. He says, of whatever now you deem the time to be. Oh, it's a polite way of saying it's ready.
when you are. I'm ready when you are. Is that it?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, that's the English polite equivalent. Now, yes, sir. Okay, there's some good, all good grammar here. We know tassa. Namo tassa bhagavato. Tassa is the deictic to that, but yes, sir is just the relative pronoun of whom or of whatever. This is Dani means now, of whatever now, Galam Manyasi. Manyasi, you deem the time. Yes, Dani.
Whatever now you deem the time.
Kala means time. And we have the goddess Mahakali. And in Pali, in English, if you do time, it means you've been sentenced to a term of imprisonment. In Pali, when you do your time, it means you die. So kalam karoti, he does time, meaning he dies. He's completed his time. And somebody who has done his time is kalam kata, the time done. Somebody who has died.
And
time's up.
say the equivalent in German, it means you die.
Does it?
Die Zeit ist auf. Die Zeit ist auf.
Die Zeit is out. Time's up.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Time, gentlemen, please.
Time is up.
Yeah.
Your time is up.
Now, Manyasi, we're going to start on the Mangala Sutta. Manyasi, note well this root. Sadhukam Manasi Karota. Mark well. Manasi in the mind, Karota, make or put. The root man turns up all over the place. It turns up in the very first line of the Mangala Sutta, Bahudeva Manusacha. Man is a very ancient root, which we have in Latin as mens. Mens meaning the mind. In Latin, mens, mentis, from which we get mental. And there are several roots that look rather like our modern English words, and by a wonderful coincidence, they are. So that root man, we have in modern English as man, because man was the thinking creature. Power of thought was what distinguished man from beast. So our word man is from the whole Vedic root, and pre was men or something like that, anyway, whatever was in Indo-European. So it makes also the verb to think, mentation. And Manu is the original human being in Hindu mythology. The primal man is called Manu. Do you uphold me on that, Veronica?
Oh yes, I was going to say the
Thank you
hymn to
very
primal
much.
man, the hymn to Manu, yeah.
I always need to
Yes, the
consult
first
with
man.
Veronica when I'm saying anything about Hinduism. So Manu is the primal man.
That means like the first, the original,
Hmm?
like Adam.
Like Adam, yeah.
So the
Yeah.
first original
Yeah.
form.
But he's a lot more primal, a lot more
More primal
than
like sort of pre-primal.
So Manu is man, and descendant of Manu in Sanskrit is Manushya. So that, and in Pali, Manushya becomes Manusa. Now look at verse, well, it's marked as 2 in these because I have on the prose bit of the beginning. Bahudeva Manusacha Mangalani Achintayum. This Manusa is descendants of Manu. So this is one of these, it's come just to mean human, but it's specific reference to Hindu mythology, earliest man. I'm just trying to check that this is visible enough for the recording. Bahudeva Manusacha. For those of you new to grammar, just the makes an in the plural. The Buddhas is the Buddha, Sabbe Buddha, all of the Buddhas. So do you have any experience of Pali learning?
I tried that online Oxford Pali.
Oh, I know.
Class,
Yes.
I haven't gone far.
Okay, right.
Very little.
Right. So Bahudeva, many gods. Bahu just means many. It can mean much as a singular or many as a plural. You also have the form Bahula, which means much the same as Bahu, essentially the same, but it's often used in the sense of repeated practice. You have Bahuli, Bhavana, Bahuli Kata, that's the phrase Bahuli Kata, we often find much made, in other words, practiced it much.
It's in the Bhujangas.
That's right. Bahuli. So what did all of the Bhujanga, Bhavita, Bahuli Kata, yes. So the Bhujanga, these factors of enlightenment, Bhavita developed, Bahuli Kata, literally much made, Bahuli Kata, much made. In other words, repeatedly practiced. Mangalani, Mangala. It's been suggested, I mean, a little bit of doubt, that it's from a root mang, meaning to go. It sometimes happens that mang, I've never seen mang used as a verb. It does sometimes happen that the, sorry, I'll start it from a slightly different place. The vast majority of all words in Vedic and Sanskrit and equally in Pali are traceable back to an identifiable verbal root. Some are not. But these wonderful methodical Indian minds of the old grammarians, Panini, wonderful old grammarian, lived about the same time as the Buddha. They were just desperate to find a root. Everything had, because most words had roots, they thought, oh, let's try and find a root for every word. And so they picked up words like mangala. Ooh, they can't think of the verb, mangami. So that's it. They almost invented roots. Sometimes, just because they've just got to have a root. You know, sometimes the police are desperate to find some culprit. So yes, so they invent one. So mangala, the verb means to go, to the extent it's a genuine root at all, and what is the translation? You'll soon learn not to ask me what's the best translation, but don't. This is a prime example of how it's absolutely, not exactly useless, but not really terribly helpful. So what's the best translation of mangala? Because in this sutta, the word mangala it appears in each verse, it describes what the mangalani, neuter plural, mangalam, singular, mangalani, neuter plural. It describes what all of the things that are mangalani. There we are. Is there one English word that fits all those? Probably blessings. You know, does it reasonably well? But these things that enhance life, the mangalani.
How do you get that from go?
Well, I was wondering, I couldn't think why. I mean, until actually Rob Adkins at his group last week was talking about Mangala, and he asked me, well, tell us about Mangala. And I said, well, there's a theory, it comes from the root mang meaning to go. And then Rob came up with this brilliant idea. I mean, on the hope it was very quick thinking, he might even be right. Is it that which enables you to go, which removes obstructions to enable you to proceed? Now, that might or might not be right, but it's a jolly good thought. And remember also, some of these interpretations might not be strictly academically correct, might not be. However, in the minds of the native speakers at the time, that was probably the resonance that it had. So whether you can academically trace it back to that root actually doesn't matter terribly much, because that was very likely how the native speakers of Pali and Sanskrit at the time thought of the word.
So it means to go, basically. Because you could say go well, couldn't you? Go well on your way. That sort of way of
it
well.
Could be it, as in farewell.
Farewell.
So
Farewell.
to farewell.
To farewell. On the way.
I really like that idea about the obstacles though. Because it's life in a way, isn't it, William?
That's
You
right.
know, and it goes smoothly and you
proceed
That's what I mean.
without the obstacles.
Yeah, but going is faring in a sense, and farewell, not as bye-bye, but farewell.
Farewell on your way. May you fare well.
Because
Like
you wouldn't have
wishing
any
that.
obstacles. You're right, yeah. It would just be a clear passage.
I wish
Now,
you well on
keeping
your
it
way.
simple for me again. We have got so many different little squiggles, dashes, dots above and below the numbers. I get it. The squiggle over the end, I'm happy with.
The squiggle over the end.
Yeah,
Exactly the same as
pronunciation.
the Spanish. Magnesi.
Yes. and over the A makes it long A.
Mhm.
Right, now here we've got a dot over the N. Are all those things purely for pronunciation?
They are, yes.
Right, so what does the dot over the N?
Okay, let me explain the dot over the end. Okay,
There
now-
are plenty more of those.
so let's look at the English word in. In. And if you wrote it in the library, it would be like that, just in, extraordinary gentle N. Now, supposing you add a K after it. Now, we don't say ink, but ink. The n sound changes automatically as we pronounce your n sound, ink. So, in Devanagari, you would write the n sound with a different letter, the n sound. This isn't really how you do it, but I just do it this way. This n sound is different from the n. So in English, we use the same n, or we put a g after it, between sin and sing. But all it means is that the letter is pronounced as an n. And the reason we bother to put the dot over it is because in the Indian scripts, that's how it's written. There's a separate letter for it. In fact, there are separate letters for the n, nya, nra, la. All of them are written as a n with a different sign. Simple as that.
In going back to old German script, the I is like that, the N is like that, the M is like that, and the U is like that, but you put dots and dashes over it.
Oh.
So the I gets a dot to distinguish it from a letter E,
Okay, right. Okay.
which is written the same without the dot.
Oh.
And the N and the U are differentiated by putting a slash over the U.
Okay, right. So
that's
that's just two letters that might get confused, or then differentiated by putting a diacritic, which is a Greek word meaning making a distinction between two things. So, and here this is simple enough. This is Maniasi. The tilde has been chosen because Spanish has given it to us. It's Señor.
Mañana.
Mañana. Mañana, señor. So,
What is the script on the right hand side?
oh, that's the Devanagari script. That's the one that you normally find Sanskrit. People have often asked me, well, you know, we've got this Pali here in Roman script. Are you going to say anything about the Pali script? The answer is Pali does not have a script. No, it doesn't have a script.
It's
So
a
what was written in
sound.
when it was written down, what was written down in Sanskrit?
No, what happened was Pali wasn't even written down as far as we know. The suttas weren't written down until about 100 BC, namely 400 or so years after Buddha's death, in Sri Lanka. That was where it was first written down. And it was written down in whatever script they used there, an ancient Sinhala script. Now, for example,
But Pali was always spoken. So was it in Sri Lanka, was it making this Pali writing?
they would have taken the Pali sounds and written those sounds in their own script.
Right, so what is this text translated from? Pali.
The text we're looking at now.
Yes, they were translated from Pali.
They didn't translate it from Pali. Okay, Pali, the Buddha spoke in a certain language, which either was Pali or very, very close to it. Obviously, there must be some changes. But essentially, the Buddha spoke Pali, essentially. And what he said is, according to history, was remembered and repeated by the monks, the members of the Sangha. And it was remembered in that way. The suttas, his sayings, were remembered in that way for a full 400 years, until they were committed to writing in Sri Lanka about 100 BC. So it existed purely as an oral tradition, rather like the ancient Greek heroic. Homer, for example, wasn't written down for a long time. The Vedas were not written down for a very long time after they were first composed. But this is a very important bit here, that in India, the importance in the cultural tradition was the oral transmission and the accurate oral transmission of the spoken word. That was what was culturally central. The script didn't matter. So, for example, a modern Thai monk will have his Pali scriptures in the Thai script. You show it to a fellow monk from Burma over the border, and the Burmese monk won't understand a single letter of it. He might manage to work out, but probably not. Equally with the Sinhala script, because the Burmese, the Thai, and the Sinhala scripts are all completely different. Send a Thai monk to Sri Lanka and give him a copy of the Pali scriptures there. If the Thai monk then recites it to him, of course the Thai monk will understand perfectly, but he won't be able to read a word of it. So whatever script correctly conveys the sound is, according to Indian cultural tradition, absolutely fine. Even the Devanagari script, which Sanskrit is written in now, is relatively recent. It's not much more than 1,000 years old.
So the English versions of the Pali canon, which written language were they taken from? Because I don't think the scholars who translated them were familiar with all the different scripts. They must have picked one of them.
Okay, some of them were.
Translators might have used different scripts.
So, for example, Rhys Davis, he was in the civil service in Sri Lanka. That's where he took a major interest in the Sinhalese-speaking monks. It was quite easy to learn these scripts. And Burmese, Thai, Sinhala, they're all alphabetic scripts, and you can learn them very, 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 very quickly. You have many scholars who will be very familiar with Burmese and Thai and Sinhala scripts, and will read the manuscripts and will compose extract the true text from them. And it's not terribly difficult to do.
So then we have this version in our script, whatever, and then you look at the Sanskrit. When we work out the etymology of them all, we compare everything and we see that link between Sanskrit, as Sanskrit is written in our script. Is that right?
Yeah, it doesn't. Remember, it's culturally unimportant what script it's written in. Sanskrit is essentially a spoken language. The script is a mere convenience. For example, the Devanagari script that Sanskrit is commonly written in now was unknown at the time of the Buddha. There was a Brahmi script there that most people don't know.
So in the library at Queen, that's the Brahmi script.
That is Brahmi, and you show that to any, say, modern Hindi speaker, who would then, because they would have been brought up reading the Devanagari script, which is what modern Hindi is written in, and they will not be able to decipher a single letter of the Brahmi script unless they've made a special study of it.
Absolutely, because
a bit like our Norse runes.
Well, there's an Indian lady who comes to Green Street, and she said, "Can you show me the script in the library?" She'd heard about it, and she couldn't understand it. And I know where she comes from, sort of between Pune and Bombay. So
in that case, she would be very
and she's well educated, but she could not.
Okay, if she's between Pune and Bombay, she would probably be a Marathi speaker, and they use the Devanagari script.
And Hindi.
And Marathi, Hindi, Nepali, A couple of others use the Bhagavad script. But the thing is, and people said, oh, but are we really reading Pali because we're reading it in Roman script? The answer is yes, we are, because culturally, it's not important. It's the complete other end of the spectrum from Chinese, because culturally in China, the educated person was not the person who could recite things correctly by heart. It was that they called 认字, knowing the characters. So in China, culturally, it's the written language that has been central to education and knowledge, and the learned person was good at the written language and the ancient characters that have, traceable right back several thousand years, and with you can trace the development of how they're written. You must have learned some of it in your own childhood.
Yeah, only written ones. That's because I learned written Chinese, but never learned the sound of it.
Okay, right, yeah.
That makes sense in that
Okay,
sense.
right. So in Chinese, the knowledge of the script is vital to being an educated, learned person.
It's the same over here, would you not say?
We're kind of halfway in between. It is pretty much the same over here. But in India, it's completely different. It doesn't matter what script you use. The criterion for a good script, culturally in India, is one that whatever symbols you use doesn't matter. The criterion for a good script is it represents the sounds accurately. Now, back to Iris's question, these squiggles, as we call them, diacritics is what the distinguishing marks. These simply because we only have 26 letters in our Roman alphabet, not quite enough to represent all the sounds of Sanskrit and Pali. But add a few dots and dashes here and there, hey presto, it's done.
So is that, are we confident that this is precisely representing the sounds?
That we can be fully sure of. And there are two ways that we can be very sure about it. One is that up until the present day, we have a vibrant living tradition of Pali chanting, an unbroken tradition, which we have very much alive in Thailand, Burma, and Sri Lanka. And we have the benefit of that. There are slight variations in pronunciation between, for example, the way a Thai chants, a Thai monk chants, and the way a Sri Lankan monk chants, for example. But these are kind of minor differences, no greater than the differences in received pronunciation, London, Wales, Scotland. We have our minor differences, but it's all essentially the same language. That's one way that we know that we were reproducing it fairly accurately. The other way is that you can find easily on the internet Brahmins chanting the Vedas. Now, when you get Brahmins chanting the Vedas, groups of people who until very recently have had no contact with each other, you'll find Brahmins from Kashmir down to Tamil Nadu chanting the Vedas the same way, with virtually the same pronunciation. So they've been very, very careful about maintaining that tradition. It's culturally so important in India. So when you compare the modern chanting of the Theravada monks, for example, and the internet is awash with Brahmins chanting the Vedas, it's there for there to go listen and say, aha. There's, they all agree what these sounds were. Also, I mentioned Panini earlier, the mighty grammarian Panini. He was probably, I think it's right to say, the first person in the history of linguistics actually to write down what exactly the vocal organs are doing with certain sounds. So when we have a chap who actually is writing down, you put your teeth like that, your tongue like that, you see? So that is just one example of how they're so precise these Indians were, but exactly recording everything down to the point of recording exactly how the tongue curls back to make the D sound. So the tongue on the teeth for the D sound, tongue curl back for
Fig
the
tree
D
material.
sound.
It was referred to in the fig tree material.
Sorry?
That pronunciation and the way of making a sound, it's indicated in the, I don't know what you call it, the fig tree material.
Oh, is that right?
I seem to remember that, yeah, yes, yeah, that's one way of putting it.
So could you write it in phonetic alphabet script?
Yeah.
Because I don't know whether it's still used, but we were taught languages using the phonetic alphabet.
The international phonetic.
Yes.
Oops.
Wait.
Just to say that the Vedas had to be recited exactly right in terms of pronunciation because they were sacred utterances. So if they didn't get the intonation right, the purpose of the hymn or whatever, or incantation wouldn't work. It was very much like a sacred utterance. So that's what I understand. So really the sound and exactly how the sound was made and the intonation would be especially important.
It's probably the same in Pali.
Yeah.
You know, when we would do the puja, if you don't do it, if you don't do it, if you don't do it
This one is
right,
Rituals. Yeah, if
it's not, yeah, like in a ritual, exactly, yeah.
But it's clear everything else around it. Ah, it's getting slowly. And then
Believe
we go in the
very
very
strongly that this power of the sound itself.
Yeah, yes,
absolutely.
That was
It's
on the whiteboard.
Okay.
vibrates different parts of the body.
Oh, that's the same thing. Yeah,
I chanted the Metasitter to my cousin last week, which is his mum's funeral. And then he went out and was sick. But I think he needed to be. But it was interesting, he didn't know what I was chanting. But there's something, isn't there, about the sound that, like you said, or, yeah, it just changes things.
So yeah, that point you were making about the intonation being right, because unless the sound was exact, the sound was so important that if you got the sound wrong, it would not have the effect in summoning the divine help that you were asking for. In fact, it could have disastrous consequences.
You couldn't get it right.
No, seriously,
Right,
it
yeah.
could be a life and death matter. You know
That's
about
what I was saying.
Twashta? Poor Twashta. Let me tell you about Twashta. Twashta was kind of intermediate in Hindu mythology. Twashta was one of these semi-divine people. Anyway, Twashta fell out with Indra. They had a serious argument.
Indra being a god.
Indra being a god.
Of thunder or something.
And he wanted to kill Indra. But he thought he wouldn't do it himself, but he would create a special incantation so that his son, I forget the name of his son, his son would kill Indra. So,
This rings a bell.
So Indra, partly in this slash of the S is the palatal sh sound. Indra, Shatru means enemy, also slayer. Now, he created this incantation, a very powerful incantation, so that his son would be the killer of Indra. His son would kill Indra. Now, he did the incantation and he pronounced it Indra Shatru. Is there tones in early days? Indra Shatru. Got the sound wrong, changed the meaning. If he'd said Indra Shatru, that would have been fine. The Indra killer. My son will be the Indra killer. But he got it wrong, silly fellow. And instead said Indra Shatru, reversed the meaning, Indra the killer, meaning Indra the killer of my son, instead of my son the killer of Indra. So by getting that single sound wrong, Indra Shatru, he made an incantation that took his son's life. Now that shows you how important it is.
Karma.
To get the
Wrong
pronunciation.
intention.
It can have disastrous consequences if you get it wrong.
But also, it's in the sounds is energy. I still remember hearing the Bojangas chanted by 900 people at Green Street, and the hair on my arms was standing up.
Oh, yes, the huge energy. In this.
Absolutely. So they might have based it on the energy, because they were working with energies. So getting the chant right, sort of to do the work.
Yeah.
Embodying it with energy.
Little did they know that if they got it wrong, it could have been a life and death matter.
Oh, they don't teach grammar like this.
I'm taking it a little bit, but in the Catholic Mass, there's one particular point in Latin. Well, my cousin told me this because he was a Catholic priest and it was part of his training. You know, in the Catholic Mass where it changes the bread and wine into the body and blood of Christ. And there's some, I can't remember, it used to be in my mind, the words said in the Catholic Mass.
Hoc est enim corpus meum.
Yeah, well, so I've even got to, because then they ring the bell and then they.
You just tell them.
And then-
You know, I was thinking like a have to, then I have to kneel thing.
Yeah, yes, that's right.
I always have to kneel, like, it doesn't matter.
And the altar boy would ring the bell.
That's it.
Yeah, they ring the bell, yeah.
But that's it, so that's supposed to be the time, it changes, well, again, not in substance, but in transubstantiation, it's the key thing, you know, separates the Catholics from the Protestants. But it does make it into something different. It's no longer bread and wine, it's the body and blood. But it's the same idea, isn't it, of pronunciation, saying it right, has the bell, you know, it's got to be done right. And
The sound of the
that
words,
sort of thing.
yes.
But with Pali, it's energy.
And Pali is a little bit more liberal because you find it pronounced in different kinds of ways. And you find people, the Thai, for example, just the firstly Namo Tassa, the Thais don't pronounce it Namo with this glottal stop, Namo. And a Northern Indian say, hang on, why is the Western pronouncing it as Namo, not Namo, but it's just because according to the phonetics of Thai, you put automatically put a glottal stop in there. But it does not belong in the native pronunciation. By the way, in the pronunciation that I use, I do my best to follow the pronunciation of modern Hindi, which we know is very close to the way that the Vedas are pronounced, and highly likely to be very close to the way that the Buddha spoke. Pronunciation hasn't changed that much over all that time in India. We can be reasonably certain about that. So here we are.
Pronunciation.
Bahudeva Manusacha Mangalani Achintayum. There's a little bit of grammar here. Mangalam is a neuter noun, and Mangalani, this ani ending, is the neuter plural. Now, Achintayum, by the way, when you see this, the notations I've put here, the N2P neuter accusative plural. But it's there in the study resources guide, which you should all have. There's a sheet on which explains these abbreviations. Achintayum. It's the same, the root is chint, but there's also the root chit, from which we have chitta. And you very often find that you get parallel roots, one of which has a nasal as an N or an M in it, and the other doesn't. You trace them back to Vedic, and they turn out to be the same root in early times. So this achintayum, the same root ultimately from which we get the word chitta. This is just the third plural past. They have thought. They've thought about it. Achintayum. I won't bother with the complete grammar now, because now we're doing more just general exposure to text. But look at their roots there, the chint there, same as chit, achintayum, they have thought. They've applied their minds to it. So Bahudeva Manusacha, many devas, many gods and humans, Mangalani Achintayum. They've thought about these Mangalani. In other words, they've given their attention. They've mentally searched
Sorry,
what they are.
Can you just tell me what is the Sanskrit root of chin? Is it C-I-N?
No, you have two roots, chit and chint.
So C-I-T and C-I-N.
And C-I-N-T. And they've been differentiated slightly, but they're clearly from, in earliest times, there were clearly just varieties of a single root. The original meaning of that root, go back to Vedic times, means brightness.
Right.
Because the mind, it's the chitta that brings brightness or light or understanding to inert matter, was the original thinking behind it. And you get the word chitra, same as Sanskrit and Pali. It was Pramaha Vichit, was a well-known Thai monk. And chitra just means bright as an adjective, or by extension meaning a picture, a painted picture, chitra. So just remember this chit, the original meaning was brightness, the brightness of thought, the light that thought gives. And here, it's the chint rather than the chit root is being used. Treat them as variants of one single root. They've thought about it. Mangalani achintayum, they've thought on blessing, thought on Mangalani. Akankamana suttanam. Akankamana suttanam, desirous of well-beings. Now, akankamana is a classic example. If I tell you, it means they're desirous of something. People who are new to Pali, who don't know Pali, and the same applies to Sanskrit very well, just a string of noises that I've got to learn. And it means that because the teacher told me, or the dictionary told me it meant that. But now let's break this word down, and you'll see actually it makes very good sense. And breaking this word down is not a central reason why we have said this word now, hopefully, will come to life for you. We have all chanted on very, very numerous occasions the root kam, kamesu michachara veramani sikapadam samadhyami, the kamesu. Okay, we have our root kam. Actually, it's a short and we make the verbal noun kama. Actually, no, forget this. It's a lot. I'll tentatively commit. I better check, just double check whether the actual root of the short or wrong. Anyway, karma we all know. Kam, it means the root meaning is to desire something. So the karma, the original meaning of it was the act of desiring. And then by extension, it meant that which is desired, therefore sensory enjoyment, karma. And we have the well-known Sanskrit work, I should say, the Kama Sutra, which is the naughty one. There is also a Pali Sutra, which is called the Kama Sutra. What's that right? Of course, that was they took it. Each of them had a slightly different take on what one's correct approach should be. So There's the naughty Sanskrit Kama Sutra, and then there's the Pali, the Kama Sutra. In fact, it might not be quite as naughty as you think. I'll tell you why.
Which one?
The Kama Sutra, the Sanskrit one,
Yeah.
even though it's regarded as naughty. When I was in Delhi many years back in '67, as somebody I met, and I visited his house, and he was a lecturer in Sanskrit at the University of Delhi. And he was showing me his collection of books at his house. And with great pride, he took off his shelves a Sanskrit version of the Kama Sutra, the naughty one, and announced with great affection and pride, "This is what my professor gave me as my wedding present." Seriously, slightly taken back, but then
British.
you're getting married, so it's perfectly normal period of your life where the pleasures of the senses duly channeled within lawful wedlock, perfectly fine, you see. So I was rather touched by that. This professor had given him a lovely edition of the Kama Sutra in Sanskrit.
Well,
So-
I gave you Mein Kampf. Everybody who got married got a copy of Mein Kampf.
Mein Kampf is wonderful. Oh, yes.
I think I've already read it.
I started reading it actually.
So did I twice.
It's quite heavy going, isn't it?
It's dire.
Goodness
It's
me.
dreary. I borrowed it from the prison library. And I handed it back after I tried to read it. It is absolutely dire.
Yeah,
And then-
it's so heavily written. I mean, the rumor has it, or history has it, that even some of Hitler's right-hand men just found it awfully difficult to get through, just so heavily written.
But anyway, and then I had to be reported because there was no bound. I think you find it, it's not in any library nowadays.
Was this
It's
in prison in
banned.
Germany or
No,
in
here,
England?
here.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll find it in any library now.
We don't actually ban books. I suppose we.
Well, it
Get
certainly was
removed.
banned. It was one of the books because of nationalism and racism and all the rest of it.
Goodness me.
I doubt any of the
As soon as I
extremes
hear of a
would
book
ever
being banned, I think somebody else will find it.
I doubt any of them has read it.
So anyway, karma, desire. Now,
I'd rather have a Kama Sutra than Mein Kampf.
Mein Kampf, mein Karma, mein Karma.
Yes.
So karma, this would come. Then actually, I mentioned a moment ago that you get parallel routes or one route developing from another, like a development of meaning. So you get a route developed from calm, which in Sanskrit is kanksh, the dot under the S makes it a sh sound.
Do you pronounce the second K?
Kanksh in Sanskrit, yes. And you have it, if you learn to speak Chinese, you know in Chinese has a distinction between sh and sh. Polish has a distinction between sh and sh. Sanskrit has that distinction as well, sh and sh. This is the sh. Kanksh, meaning to desire or to aspire towards, is a route developed from kanksh. It means not so much a physical desire, more like a mental aspiration towards something. Kanksh. The prefix "a" very often has like a dynamic meaning of movement. So the akanksh is the mind aspiring towards something, like a dynamic movement of the mind, that which you aspire towards.
Like striving.
Like a striving. Now, look at, I use the word aspire. Just spirare in Latin means to breathe. And then it has the spiritual sense, but aspirare means the striving of the mind towards something. And so even in Latin, the ad has that same meaning. The has that same meaning. So the akanksh, the desire, in worldly terms, it can mean an ambition, but very often it has this spiritual aspiration, and you can make a purple noun out of it. Akanksha, which is also used among modern Hindus, for example, it's often used as a girl's name. The idea of the aspiration towards something higher. Now, the word here, akankamana, in Sanskrit, the present participle, a person who aspires, one who aspires, akankamana. Oops. Just that mana ending, which is a passive participle, which we use in English in some words from Greek. For example, prolegomena.
Never heard of that one.
Lego, I say, prolego means I say in advance, I preface something, introductory remark. Prolegomena, things said in advance, namely in introductory comments. So that same menos in Greek is from mana in Sanskrit, menos in Greek. So akankshamana just means one who aspires, one who has a mental aspiration towards something. Now look at the word in Pali, and you'll see akankamana. It's the same word, aspiring towards. Normally, where you have a sh in Sanskrit, it becomes a k in Pali. That's the normal phonetic mutation. And the rest is the same. Notice that the long R of the Sanskrit is shortened in Pali because Pali does not like to have a long vowel before a before either a consonant cluster or a doubled consonant. So a-kan-sh becomes a-kan-ka in Pali. That's the normal phonetic progression. So akankamana just means aspiring towards, with that same kam as in kama, desire, the mental desire.
Is the mana then the same like a person, one who is it, or have I got
Sorry?
it wrong? With the mana at the end, is that anything to do with manu, or that's nothing?
No, it's not. It's entirely separate.
Just separate.
That's just one of the present participial endings.
So is the present participle means it's like a doing?
Exactly so. Akankamana
Oh, I see. They're doing
desire
that.
people who desire.
They're doing it in doing.
Exactly. It's descriptive of people who have this aspiration. So this bahu, it's an adjective here qualifying bahudeva manusacha.
Oh, right.
So many devas and humans, akankamana, aspiring towards suttanam. No, suttanam. Sada suti bhavantu te. That's suti. It's from, in Thai, it becomes swasti. In Sanskrit, swasti. In Thai, it becomes sawati. No, sawatika, sawatikra. Sawati is just the Thai pronunciation of swasti. So in Thai, when S comes at the end of a syllable, it's pronounced as a T. Swasti, swati. Let me explain swasti.
We've had that before.
Sorry?
I don't think we've had this
we
one,
have.
we? Okay. Swat
It takes us
what?
down entertaining path. that. So just make sure I'm using the right marker now. Yeah, it's okay.
So that little thing here, so it's all of the.
I think this deserves to go in a bin, actually. Right, now. Sultanum is the genitive plural, desirous of is sultani. Now, sultana, let's go back to Sanskrit. And we have the root as. As meaning to be. And I mentioned this last time. From that root us to be, we have the Latin esse and est, esse to be, est it is. Into modern German, ist is, in modern English, is. All from this original root as, meaning to be. So it is, in Sanskrit, is the regular verb, it's just asti. Asti, it is. And this is combination of the Latin est, German ist, English is. In Pali, by regular phonetic mutation, asti, Sanskrit, becomes atti. This is the regular phonetic mutation where almost whenever in Sanskrit you have a sit followed by a stop consonant like a p, t, k. In Pali, what happens, the S is dropped, the consonant is doubled, and you have the H after it. Pushpa becomes uppa, meaning a flower. That's in one of our chants, the offering chants. Skandha becomes kandha. Samskara becomes sankara. This is regular phonetic mutation, Sanskrit to Pali. Now, the prefix su means, we all know the prefix, so anything good or wonderful or beautiful. For example, as in, we have it in sugato, literally the well gone, the one who's gone to a good place. A desirable rebirth is a sugati. If you're easy to talk to or speak nicely, you're super chassa mudu anatimani, the karne metta su. So su means anything good. Now, you can make, if you have su plus asti, it now makes a noun, su asti, well-being. Anything that gives you well-being, makes your life good. Because of internal Sanskrit rules, you got an u followed by an a, so the u changes to a v, so su asti becomes swasti, written like that. Swasti. So swasti just means well-being. Su asti, well-being. In Pali, slightly irregular phonetic mutation, the Sanskrit swasti becomes sutti. This is where we have sada sutti bhavantu te. May all well-beings be unto thee. Sada sutti bhavantu te. Now, so that is where we have this sultanum, desirous of, the sut can be sutti or sutta in Pali, desirous of well-beings, desirous of good things in life, things that enhance your life. Su asti. Now, among the Brahmins, you would at some auspicious occasion, like a wedding, the birth of a child, something like that, you would have a Brahmin whose particular function was to come and confer these swastis on the family, either on the newly married couple, the newly born baby. And that person in Sanskrit would be called the swastika, the person who gave blessings. Do you recognize that word? Vaguely. So,
But it didn't refer to them, did it?
well, this was, I mean, I've never seen such an act of cultural appropriation in the history of mankind, that the Nazi Party adopted not only the symbol, but the word itself, because you'll see in ancient temples, hang on, there was the difference.
It's the way it goes, yeah. It goes the other way.
It goes the other way. This is called the right-handed swastika. The Nazi swastika was the left-handed swastika, and you can tell which is which. Imagine this is a cross on a pivot, and these are streamers hanging off the four ends. If you spin it clockwise, the streamers will be like that. If you do it anti-clockwise, the streamers will be like that, and that's the Nazi one. But this one, I think you find both among the Hindus, but I think the one on the right is, I think, more common.
They took things from all sorts of cultures and mixed them up. So like Wagner, for example, that's why they loved him.
Like who?
Wagner.
Oh, Wagner, yes. Yeah.
That's why they loved him. All sorts of mystical non-existence.
Yes.
And they sent the archaeologists out to find whatever to pin things on.
Das echte Deutsch, the true German.
Best.
So there we are. So that's how the word
Swastika. That's where it came from.
reaches us. So swastika originally referred in Sanskrit, and you have it in Pali, Suttika, but not much used in Pali. But Sanskrit, the swastika is the well-being man, the Brahmin who comes to give you your blessings of swasti. By extension in Sanskrit, it also came to mean a symbol of well-being. Originally it meant the man who did the chants. Then it came to mean the symbol. And so this symbol there. It's an enormous pity that it's rather been spoiled in the first half of the last century, but there it is. Maybe we can revive the true meaning and the blessings of it. Maybe a little bit premature to be putting up swastikas here, just getting the wrong idea. I think the committee might be against it. Whatever explanations we give, it would take too long to make them before we got lynched.
I think it's really interesting, isn't it, when we look at this translation, how these gods and humans desirous of well-being. Whereas in our culture, it almost we've always been taught, like with Christ and the cross and sufferings, it's not, this is the beginning of great blessings, desiring well-being.
Yeah.
It's that whole root of the whole thing. Yeah. And yet there's something in our culture that almost says, oh, we're not meant to, that's not right to desire well-being, or, it is really helpful to see how much that is at the foundation of it all, that desiring of well-being.
It's totally opposite to all Christian.
Exactly, that's what I meant, yeah.
To take up your cross instead.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not meant to be, because it might be twisted by the faith as a control thing. Maybe Christ himself didn't say that. I mean, I know a lovely lady.
But it's been translated again so many different times.
That's true, yeah. And the other one I thought was noteworthy was just when you talked about qualifying the David and humans. When you said, I can come, to desire, active desiring, or that which is desired. And it makes you feel about non-duality between subject-object, the way they're saying it, that which is, it's almost like it's all the same thing, whether it's I'm desiring or the object of my desire. It's not a separation, it's all the same, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. Speaking purely as an academic, or with an academic grammarian's hat on, This is a participle from a verb, and it indicates the people who are desiring something. And strictly grammatically, sultanum is the object of that participial verb, namely desirous of these.
But when you said at the beginning, you were looking at the etymology of come
Yes, that's
and
right.
karma, and
Yeah.
you said it is to desire, the act of desiring, and it's come to mean that which is that.
Oh, that's
which is
right, yes,
desired.
exactly, yeah.
And when you
that's
talked
correct.
about linking it in with that book from the professor, there's a whole sense of union in a couple with that desiring, and because in a way that's what makes it so special, that you lose the sense of separateness in that. And it felt the same with this sense, because I always think isn't it one of our whole keys of what makes us separate is object, subject, and the consciousness of both. So
That's a
it
good
feels
point. I
something about
hadn't
the whole
thought of that way, yes.
intertwining and the losing that subject and object, and whether it's desire or that which is desired, it's the same. It has the sense of flipping from what you were
That's right,
saying.
you have quite a number of words in Sanskrit that are the act of doing something and the result of doing it as well. Even karma, the word karma, kamma in Pali, means the act of doing something, and equally means the results of that act, as in karma, and in karma, K-A-R-M-A, karma, kamma in Pali.
Which is very different to our linear way of looking at things.
It
That's what you
is,
said,
it is,
karma.
yes, yeah.
But while we are doing it, the result is there in that whole process.
Yeah.
It's interesting that act of desiring, there's no who is desiring this. So in that word. So often in Korean we omit the subject. So when we say in the sentence, often we don't say I do or you do or he does. We just say the rest of it. So often the subject is implied, but not necessarily say the subject. So in that sense, subject becomes really small, almost like no meaning. So I just felt like, yeah, here is kind of similar kind of feeling. So it's like
Right, but
no one does like I don't know how to say
Yeah,
it.
no, yeah.
So I becomes really small, almost nothing, none. And then the act itself is much more important, regardless of who does that. I don't know.
But that's what the studies go on, sort of, we are nothing in essence. That's what Buddhism is about, sort of, it's not about me, I, ego, and all the rest of it.
I'm not.
It's sort of deflation of ego.
Yeah. So that doesn't matter or disappears. Well, I don't know which one. Just
It makes sense.
shall we have a brief break?
Yeah.
tea.
Yes, please, go, as usual, anyhow. I'll just try and pause the recording.
It's not cold anyway.
Recording, pause, recording. Sorry, I forgot to switch back the recording. Just saying that for whoever listens to it later. Sorry about that.
In a sense, the change of the consonants, let's call them consonants, simplifies it. Maybe it was done to transmit the Buddha's teaching as far and wide as possible, because it's easier to say Nibbana than Nirvana. You've got more things to get your tongue around. So if you want to spread it across a wide range of people with different languages, different sounds, in a sense, the sounds of Pali seem to be simpler than the Sanskrit ones.
Okay, it is true that they are simpler, but I don't think we can plausibly say that people deliberately altered things. Pali was already on its own had become a spoken language. Anujanami bhikkhave sakaya nirutya dhammam desetum. I permit you, O monks, to teach the Dhamma in your own nirutti, in your own way of speech, according to your own ways of speech. It was just the natural language. So nobody, I mean, if the entire populace was walking around saying Arta, for example, they wouldn't suddenly say, oh, let's make it Arta to make it easier. I mean, it wouldn't make it easier. So this was the ordinary spoken language. It was the language of the people, with variations, of course, from place to place. Essentially, it was the spoken language of the people. It was what they call the natural language. The word for the natural language is the Prakrit, as opposed to the Sanskrit. Sanskrit, Prakrit. Sanskrit meaning composed, refined, together. The opposite of Prakrit meaning natural.
It's sort of a bit like colloquial.
Exactly, the natural language. It
What was
wasn't a colloquial form. Now, look at the word
I
Prakrita.
know, Prakrita, I was going to say that's quite an important word in Sanskrit.
It means natural.
What, I thought it meant material.
It does also, it has a variety of meanings. Now, this is another point. Prakrita. Is this just a series of noises you've got to learn? No. Think Prakrita, procreate, the procreation of nature. Procreate and Prakrita are etymologically the same word. It's the naturally procreated languages, the naturally born languages out of normal development. And the opposite is Sanskrita, we say Sanskrit, which means put together, composed, refined.
So you're an advocate for language developing organically and not being hooked always into past rules.
No, exactly. Language does develop organically. I will happily split infinitives now. Half a century ago, I thought bad English. Now it's often regarded as bad English not to split an infinitive. Or to put a preposition.
The Germans have done that a long time ago. Germans did that a long time ago.
Yes, the separative verbs, whatever you call them.
I thought it was interesting when we were looking at Ditya, I know this came up last time we discussed it, how helpful it was for me to see it seen. So like right view is something you've seen it right.
Yeah,
it comes from
exactly.
seeing it, experiencing it, and
yeah.
actually seeing it rather than a thinking.
Exactly so. So it is like a mental seeing. Aha, have you? We still use that in have you seen it yet? Have you seen it? Do you get it? Have you seen it? See the joke. It's a mental seeing. Exactly so. That same imagery is used as of a physical seeing.
Maybe it's more than that though, because seeing is like a physical thing. So maybe it's experiencing it as well. You see it not just with your eyes, but you feel it and you embody it.
Seeing is often used in Sanskrit and Pali as a direct experience as well.
Right.
As in sakshi karoti in Sanskrit, sakshi karoti, you make something, you see it with your own eyes, sakshi. So the seeing and knowing. In fact, if you go back to the root vid, that embraces seeing and knowing in the same root, and the old Indo-European root vid, sorry, the old Vedic root vid, in Greek is oid, and in Latin vid, exactly the same as the Vedic one. It combines a seeing and knowing. And in classical Greek, you say, for I don't know, you say ukoida, which means literally I have not seen. And so if you go back to the Vedic root, seeing and knowing were almost combined in one meaning.
But it's like visualization. It's a sort of seeing, but it's not necessarily seeing concrete things with your eyes.
Exactly so.
With your mind, you can visualize things.
Indeed, and indeed any kind of knowledge. In fact, I'm talking about the Vedas. The root is vid, the same as the root video in Latin, as I said, seeing. But by Vedic times, it still had a bit of seeing in it, but it was more a kind of knowing. And you make a verbal noun by changing the E to A, and Veda. That's where we get the Vedas and Ayurvedic and Vedic, the precursor to Sanskrit. So Veda is just the verbal noun from the root vid, means the knowledge. The Vedas are the knowledges. And Ayurveda literally is life knowledge, or life science, the knowledge of human life, how to make it healthy and prolong it.
Ayurveda, is that the Ayu? Was that what you just said? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes,
Ayu.
Ayur.
Yeah.
In fact, the quite interesting one here, because the Ayu
That came up in the medicine, didn't it?
Ayusa, yes, in fact, in Vedic, Ayus, with S on the end, and instrumental Ayusa, Ayusa, Ekaputtam Ayusa and Anurake, I forget the order of the words. Anyway, it is that same one, Ayusa. Either, and the old interpretation was with one's life as regards something with your life, but here it more probably means for the duration of her life, she continues to look after. So Ayus became, in Greek, Aion, from which we get an eon, in a very, very long time. And it became in Latin, Aevus, meaning age, from which we have medieval. So whenever we use the word like medieval, means of the Middle Ages, it's that same root from of Ayus, meaning as in Ayurveda. And it often happens that the verb became a g. That's why in French and then into English, it became age. So our modern English word age, as in a person's age, the length of that person's life, is from the same origin as the Ayus, as in Ayurveda. Same word. The age, medieval, Ayurveda, all from that same root, and the eon as well, the Greek eon being the vast stretch of time. So we'll just quickly wind up on this verse too. So Akankamana Suttanam, Bruhi Mangalam Uttamam. Bruhi, from the root bru, this is the imperative. Bruhi, say, tell us. This is a rather unusual word because Pali normally doesn't like a consonant cluster. Normally it's a but or a double but. This is a bit unusual. This is one of the not very common words where Pali has retained the br, the consonant cluster. Normally you would have expected to see just bruhi, say. So root bru, and this is the imperative ending, second conjugation key. Went over with the grammar now. Bruhi is just the imperative, say. So say, the highest Mangala. Tell us what the highest Mangala is. Uttamam. We say this, we use the same word in modern English, but it's been changed to utmost. Uttama, utmost, it's the same word. Now to explain how, we have this ut, which has come into modern English as out. And it means out in Sanskrit, it means out or up. If you add the comparative suffix, meaning more out, further out, it becomes in Sanskrit and Pali, identical here in Sanskrit and Pali, uttara. Uttara means further out. If somebody is anuttara, it means there's nothing further out than that person or thing. That's how we get anuttaro purisadhamma sarati satta. Anuttaro, yeah, so Anuttaro, no, sorry. Chant it so many times, I'm, yeah, try. Anuttaro,
Yeah.
Or no country for
You've
that.
got to go back to the
That's
beginning.
billions of times we've chanted this.
Loka we do
Hmm?
That's how good.
No,
Loka
can
we do Anutaro.
Anuttaro Purusita.
Anuttaro Purisidama
Purisidama, yeah.
Satati, Anuttaro, okay. So out, Uttara, outer, further out, beyond. Anuttara, there is nothing beyond him. In other words, nothing better than that. That's the Anuttaro. Now, you can make a superlative suffix, uttama, means uttara, more to the out, uttama, most to the out, comparative and superlative. In English, this equivalent suffix has become either est, biggest, smallest, or in some words it comes up most. But that most actually reflects the uttama. So uttama, utmost, the furthest out. You can't go any further than that, the furthest thing out. And parama, from which we get parami. Parama is, the English cognate is para, far, parama, farmost, the furthest away. So the parami is like the furthest you can get. That's why they're called the perfections. It's the furthest you can get, the furthest point you can reach, the parami, in the development of the various virtues. So here, bruhi mangalam uttamam. Say, what is the utmost? What is the finest, the utmost mangala?
The highest there, does that matter that it's just another way of saying the same thing, or is there an element in there?
Get stuck on the English. Feel the word. Dama.
I know it does, I get the feeling.
Utmost. You can translate as highest, the best, the
I know,
furthest
it
out.
doesn't really matter.
Doesn't get any better than that, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm very wary about trying to capture it in a
I know.
translation.
Yeah, I know.
You'll
that's
hear
right.
me say that more than once. Don't try to capture it in a translation. So
Maybe that's
hopefully just
why-
by feeling the word.
I was thinking like perfectionism in a lifetime, you know, like they say, things the way they are is perfect. In that sense of parami being the furthest you can get. So the furthest we get in our lifetime, that's our perfection. That is where that's the furthest we've got. So it is perfect because it's the furthest.
Actually, yeah, because it could relate just to a kind of a theoretical absolute furthest point, or the furthest you have got, or the
Related to
furthest you
yourself.
can get it,
Yeah, exactly.
depending on where you are as an individual in this life.
But even like with the paramis of the Buddha perfected, they were the perfection, the furthest he could have perfected, that were able to be perfected.
I suppose you could apply the same to us. I mean, we can't be perfect, but we will have a kind of spiritual obligation, you know, to go as far as we are able.
And not to
And
feel
that is
that
our own paramis, not as far as the Buddha got, but the paramis with regard to us, the furthest that we can get.
That's like a ceiling, isn't it?
I suppose it is. You know, with you see
Ceiling we can reach.
what you're able to manage given what you started with.
there's that sense of perfection being in the process and being within one rather than it being a goal. That's where I was
Yeah, I think
feeling with it.
you can see that. You're going further and further, and what's the furthest you can get with what you've got, with what you started.
Because so often when somebody dies, you can see all their achievements and accomplishments, but they can't see that.
Yeah.
But you can see from the outside how much they have perfected things. And
It's a bit of a challenging word, perfection.
It
isn't
is, isn't it? Yeah, it is.
Achievement,
Yeah,
perfection.
exactly. Make you feel like not good enough immediately.
Are you ever meant to be?
Bit of an overrepresentation. In Latin, perficere,
Yeah.
from facere, to do. Perficere just means to carry something through to the end and do it,
The
and
utmost.
to do it and
Finish
finish it off.
Yeah, but what is the end?
But maybe at the end of the day, that he finished the day.
Yeah.
He done it.
In fact, in Latin, it didn't necessarily mean that absolutely nobody can ever do anything better. Perfectus just means finished and done. As in, for example, we in grammar we use the perfect tense. There's nothing perfect about it, it just means a completed act, an act that has been completed in the past. That doesn't mean it's
That's a
perfect
good way
there.
of putting it, isn't it? Yeah.
Perfectum.
Okay.
Can we chant at least that one verse that we just done?
Let's do the verse that we've done. Where are we now? Goodness me, we've gone to 9:30. Let's we chant this verse and then finish up with a blessing.
Yeah. Just chant that verse then, yeah?
Chant this verse. Would you like to lead it?
Sure. Vasudeva Manusa Jamangalani Yachintayon Akam Kamana Sotana Ruhi Mangalamuttamam Vadu Sabba Mangalam Rakantu Sabba Devata Sabba Buddhani Bhavena Sada Soti Bhavantu Te Bhavatu Sabba Mangalam Rakantu Sabba Devata Sabba Dhammanu Bhavena Sada Soti Bhavantu Te Bhavatu Sabba Mangalam Rakantu Sabba Devata Sabba Sanghanu Bhavena Sada Soti Bhavantu Te. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Now with these chants you're doing, little words say, aha, now feel that word from the inside.
Just to, because I don't know. So, really saying that could be up there. The phrase she's mentally and physically.
Right, turning the recording off now.
So I don't really know what's going to, what I'm going to be presenting.
Recording
when I
stop.